Judges, please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Okay, thank you. My name is Thomas Mackey, and I'm in the history department at the University of Louisville, as well as with the law school here at the University of Louisville.
I'm Rita McCannon. I'm a lawyer. I live in Huntsville, Alabama.
Good morning. I'm Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and a retired professor of American politics at Hendrix College. We're super glad to see you.
Go ahead and introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, I'm Tyson Madsen. We are from St. Joseph Ogden High School, Illinois wildcard, and our coach is Marshall Schacht.
Hi, I'm Emily Fisher. I'm going to be attending the University of South Carolina to study international business and economics.
Howdy, I'm Alec Painter. I'm going to be attending the U of I, Champaign-Urbana. We're really excited to talk to you guys today.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let me read the question and then get you guys talking a little bit. The question, this is Unit 3, Question 2, starts with a quote. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other, end quote. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You may begin.
George Washington, like John Adams, expressed his fear for political factions throughout his time as a politician. In his farewell address, he warned that political parties may now and then answer popular ends. They are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp them for themselves the reins of government. Contrary to his wishes, factions did form based on a wide range of issues, including foreign affairs, civil rights, and a differentiation between states' rights and national rights. However, the founding fathers were not naive and knew this was likely to happen regardless. In Federalist 10, Madison explains that these factions will most likely form no matter what, and that there are two methods of curing the mischiefs of faction, the one by removing its causes, the other by controlling its effects. The creation of factions was facilitated by the divide between main issues such as foreign policy, the economy, civil rights, and state sovereignty.
Most, if not all, of the difficulties of our country's past remain today, only in different forms. As a result of little to no cooperation between the parties of our nation, we have become more and more divided, just as the founding fathers feared. Issues like foreign and immigration policy, economical differences, and finding the line where the national and state governments have jurisdiction are some of these. Issues like the southern border endlessly divide our country, while still so do many civil rights problems. Bills are being proposed that are made to restrict voting across the nation, like Georgia's recent pieces of legislation that make it increasingly difficult to vote by restricting ballot boxes, reducing early voting, and requiring photo ID. A transphobic legislature is also being passed in Arkansas, as well as a near-complete abortion ban. While today's civil rights issues may look different than those that came before, they're still as divisive and pertinent to the unification of our nation.
There are times in our history where we have forgotten about political divides to unify as one nation with one goal in mind. After the events of 9/11, both parties united to create the USA Patriot Act. At the time, this seemed like a valid response to the crisis, but now in hindsight, it's clear that the Patriot Act violates the rights of the people, both foreign and domestic. Section 215, for example, violates both the First and the Fourth Amendment in regards to search warrants and how victims are allowed to speak. This is just one example of how a unified government can create things that are harmful in the long run. In contrast, having a completely split up government can be just as harmful. Even though legislation can be made, such as the First Step Act that passed with bipartisan approval, we cannot split to the extreme. John Jay worried in Federalist Paper 4 that a fragmented government would cause us to be viewed as a poor, pitiful figure if a nation found a split into 3 or 4 independent and probably discordant republics or confederacies. Being completely unified or completely fragmented is not the way to approach our system of government. In times of distress, we like to come together as a nation. However, in order to do that, we must be able to voice our differences within our unity. We don't have to be completely unified, but we need to have mutual respect as well as being willing to cross the aisle. If we are to control the effects, as Madison said, we must be able to sit down with our neighbors and discuss views and issues without turmoil. We are all human, and the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can strive towards fixing our nation and our planet. Thank you.
Cool. Nicely done and under time. Well done, folks. Look, this is one of those sort of big questions that Americans have been struggling with since the 18th century to today, is how do we manage strong personalities, strong opinions on the matters of the day, and then how do we channel them into appropriate political institutions or manners? The question, and some of your answer at least, suggests that political parties are a problem or an issue, and yet political parties also have a positive side, especially a two-party system, but not exclusively. Help me understand how political parties can be a positive for bringing about public policy.
I think that political parties definitely allow for people to identify with someone that they agree with, even though it might not be 100%. It's a way for their voice to be heard and allows for them to, get legislation through that they approve of. And I think that's really beneficial, and parties help facilitate that, because without parties, you would have a bunch of different people with different opinions, and people wouldn't be able to cooperate.
With multiple parties, you feel like your voice is being represented in legislation and in Congress, because you know that someone who's on your side is there speaking for people like you. But I think having more parties, because you might be a Democrat or a Republican, but you won't agree with 100% of their policies. But one big issue is people just vote based on the letters by their name. So having more parties and like ranked voting could allow for you to have someone who really agrees with your views representing you in Congress and in the Senate.
Excuse me, do those third parties that would represent you better have a chance to be elected?
I don't believe so, because I think that it's so one-sided, and so many people identify with either Democratic or Republican, that if they voted third party, they would feel as though their voice wouldn't be heard, because there wouldn't be enough votes within that party for them to identify with the party that was voted in.
And I also believe that one of the issues with our current third parties is that a lot of them are very far left or very far right. We have a lot of third parties that are the extremes of the parties that we have now. And I think really, to accommodate to the American people, we don't need to only focus on those extremes. We also need to make it more accessible for people that are moderate, for people in the middle.
And that's to agree with Tyson. You find that with most districts, they're more purple than red or blue, and just because of the way that they're districted, it seems like they're one way or the other. But in reality, we're completely congregated. Sorry, we're a lot more together than we really think we are.
So you've articulated some of the challenges to multiple parties. You've also articulated some of the challenges with existing two parties. As you think about your own kind of work as a political change agent or a social change agent, then where do you go? What makes the most sense? Is it within the parties? Is it through interest groups? Is it through some other entity as a way to really engage with civically in the future?
Personally, I believe that one of the ideas that I thought of is that, well, one, supporting civic education as a whole, but not only within high school with things like this, but after high school. Personally, from personal experience, my mother, I will talk about doing We the People and learning all of these things, and she goes, "Wow, I wish I could learn that. I wish I could go back and really value that. I can value that now." And I feel like there's a lot of people that just find what they like and latch to it rather than trying to learn. And so by making that more accessible, I think we can have a more educated and willing to work together public.
I think to agree with Tyson that making that education more accessible could be really beneficial to the majority of the country. And I think that whether that's through websites, social media, or just, maybe like little groups that get together and go over the values of the Constitution and our legislature so that they can fully understand where it's coming from.
Now, we're tickled that you're enjoying the program. We really like that, Mr. Madsen. Okay, we're cool with that, but I'm going to press you a little bit. My colleague's question was, as future leaders, as future change makers, do you see yourself more working within the parties or in interest groups or some other non-governmental organizations, an NGO or something, in order to maintain the civic education that Mr. Madsen, and I hope the rest of you guys are enjoying as well? Which one?
I think you'll have to work within your party to kind of agree with them and work together to further promote that education among the public.
At the risk of asking a question that was, oh, go ahead, Jay. I can ask this at the end. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to go back to, so Tyler talked about some things going on in Arkansas in terms of activity here. Is it your sense that the partisan dynamic is driven by national events or by state level events as you look across time?
I think it's both equally. I think with the Arkansas thing, it was, I believe, House Bill 1570 that was passed, the SAFE Act, that really upset a lot of people. And that was within the state, and people are actively across the country moving for that to not happen, like to abolish it. But I think across the nation, like the anti-Asian hate bill that was recently passed, that was pretty unified within the voting of passing that. I think that was across the nation, like a national bill that was passed that many people got behind on.
To talk about divide on the other side of that, I think divide is more national, where people will divide themselves based on Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and they'll divide themselves based on the actions of January 6th. And you don't see that divide as heavily when you're talking about state governors. And here in Illinois, we do have a little bit of that divide with our Mr. Pritzker, but I feel like it's a lot worse on the national level, even though you could argue that the national level doesn't really affect us as much as the state does, but we still choose to focus on the national because it's a lot easier to get heated, and people like getting heated. And I think we just need to focus more on making our local government stronger and more unified, and that'll unite us more.
Wish we had more than 40 seconds to ask you how you're going to do that. I would really love to know. And I wanted to ask you about the First Step Act. You mentioned it, and I'm familiar with it, and I wondered how you thought that was a unifying passage.
Well, with the First Step Act, I thought that was one of the pieces of legislation that I could really agree with, that has to do with prison reform. And we could all, I think mostly as Americans, we could agree that like nonviolent offenders, may I please finish my statement?
Please.
Nonviolent offenders should not be as treated as heavily as we are. And there's mass incarceration rates, and trying to limit that to get more people reformed and back into society is really important. And then I won't go any longer, but I just think it was really important.
That was good.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting discussion and interesting presentation. So thanks for the promo, Mr. Madsen. That was great. I wish I could, score this higher because of the nice promo, and I'm delighted you're having a good time. Look, I thought you really took an interesting position here. Other groups we've been talking to have talked about change, that there isn't any continuity over time from the 18th century to today. You folks are, in a way, big picture thinker. You did emphasize continuity of loose construction, strict construction over time, even if the issues change. So I thought that was sort of interesting and refreshing, and an interesting way to go at it. These are big issues that the Americans have been struggling with. There's no real answer, so that's why we ask high school students to take a position on it. But I thought you did a nice job of working with these issues and explaining your positions. I really enjoyed this, so thank you very much.
Go ahead, Jay. You're muted.
I'm muted.
Yes.
I really appreciate the degree to which y'all really were grappling with the implications of these big historical issues for your own lives and your own futures. And I really appreciate that. And you showed a real authenticity about that. And I really appreciate that enormously. I really also, whoever decided to do your setup the way you did, it's a really smart setup. We can all see your faces closely, but we can also see that you are part of a team and you're all in the same space, and it was well done. So whoever's strategy there, it's working nicely. I will say that.
I suspect it's the teacher, and well done.
Whoever.
Rita?
I would add on to what my colleagues have said to you, as an explanation of how excited I got when you talked about the First Step Act. I have a brief pending before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is real unusual for me, pertaining to a man who has spent 18 years in federal custody because of cocaine possession. And that act, so that you all will know if you don't, it was passed to try to empty the prisons of people who are sitting in jail. You know, we've got people who committed murder that don't spend that much time in jail. So I appreciated you saying that. The other thing is, you all have such common sense. I would very much like to see some of you in Congress, because you sound like you might not mind stepping across the aisle and shaking hands with somebody in the other party and saying, let's pass this act because it'll work. We can work together. That's just not happening. And I appreciate so much what you've said. And Tyson, if everybody knew something about the Center for Civic Education, our whole country would be better. I'm convinced of that. So thank you for saying that. And thank y'all for being so well prepared and so willing to talk to us this morning.
Yeah, nicely done, folks.
Good luck.
Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Start breathing again. It's okay.
Thank you so much for your feedback and just being here. So it's been a great conversation. So we appreciate your time.
Right.
And Dee, thanks for coming by.
Yeah. Congrats to you as well.
Thank you. Have a good day.